We have officially fallen off the cliff. It's bad, folks. It's really bad. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swagglehos. And in this one, we got ourselves the update for the comic book index for the month of August. It is bad. Actually, it's not that bad. It depends on how you define bad. Maybe bad actually means good, because when it's bad, that's actually good for you and me. But either way, it's a really interesting update for this particular month. Now, a little bit of a caveat here. What is the comic book index? This is just information. Okay, this is not a perfect system. I'm just one guy calculating all of this stuff. Later on in the video, we'll check in with GoCollects so that we can compare our notes. But again, take this all with a grain of salt. It's just information for you guys to help you on your comic buying, selling, collecting, whatever journey. Now, before I get into the video, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I would appreciate it. Help support the channel doing those things. Let us get into the comic book index update for the month of August. Now, what is the comic book index? The comic book index is the top 100 bought and sold comics per age. We're talking silver, bronze, and copper. I pick the highest volume of grade that I focus on. I take the final sale of each month, aka simulating a market close, and I get all of my info from GPA data. So suffice to say, if I was going to buy the top 100 most popular, most in-demand books, key books within each age, how much would it cost me on a month-by-month basis? Well, in the month of July of 2024, for Silver Age books, it would have cost you $41,731, the third lowest total that we've seen in the prior 8 or 9 months or so. We have obviously been on the snide ever since that of around March and April earlier this year, when it was looking like we were turning the corner. Well, where do we go here in the month of August? Well, ladies and gentlemen, everybody went on vacation. Comic book buyers took the month off. We have fallen off the cliff down to $36,645. This is the lowest total that this index has seen since all the way back in October of 2020. There were actually months in 2020 that were actually higher than where we are right now as far as the value of the Silver Age index. But we have to unpack that a little bit more, which we will do later on in the video, because like I already inferred, a lot of comic book buyers taking the month off, and that's really the biggest reason that this one has dropped so low. But I digress. Let's go forward to the Bronze Age and kind of talk about all the value before we really start to give our takeaways here. Now, last month for Bronze Age, we were at 31,888, the lowest number that we have seen in the prior 3 years. I mean, it was feeling like, Bronze Age had, stopped the bleeding. Maybe we were starting to kind of stabilize, but then it still kind of slowly went down. Although, the prior 2 months was a little bit of a push. It didn't necessarily go down, but you can see that we are at lower levels this summer than we had previously been at. Now, where do we go here in the month of August? Well, unlike silver, it looks like the Bronze Age buyers came out to play as we went up to 33,181. And every time you get a up month for bronze, that's always pretty impressive. Where Silver Age is often very swingy because of the types of books that make up the Silver Age index, Bronze Age is usually very consistent. I mean, we're talking a lot of, high grade books that are very, very common, where there's tons of them on the census. And it's cool to see that, people in the Bronze Age are feeling really good about the books that they're buying, as we definitely went up this particular month. More on that in a minute. Let me jump forward to the Copper Age Index just so we can have a good understanding of every age that happened this month. Now, last month we were at 22,570. Copper Age surprisingly had been doing pretty good because there were a lot of books, related to Deadpool and Wolverine, X-Men, all of these kind of cultural touch points that have this index actually sort of staying afloat. So where do we go here in the month of August? Well, we went sideways. We went to $22,593, up by a whopping $20 from the prior month. So I think that you could safely call that a push. Well, there you see the 3 indexes side by side. Pretty interesting to see that, the ones that you typically think would be quote unquote less safe in Copper Age and Bronze Age actually had better months than the quote unquote more safe index, which would have been Silver Age. But again, we have lots more to say on that front in a second. Let me just go through, the key takeaways here, the key points, just so that we can, cross our T's and dot our I's. Last month for July of Silver Age, we were at $41,731, down now to $36,645, a decrease of 13%. 13% is a really big decrease. We haven't seen these types of decreases in a long time. And, I'm somebody who in these index videos has said that I would be surprised if if we had these types of drops. Again, it feels like, the biggest stuff had actually happened, but clearly I was wrong on that front. For the Bronze Age, we were at 31,888, jumping up to 33,181. That's an increase of 5%, pretty solid increase if you ask me. And then for Copper Age, jumping up to 22,593 is basically a push. Now here on the key takeaways, if we jump in, 12% down for Silver Age, 9% up for Silver Age. So actually kind of less volatile than we've seen in usual months where you might see 15% and 15%. But the big glaring number right here is the 38% non-sale. I have never done a month for this index where we had so few sales to pull data from. I think that was the big shocker for me. Now you have to imagine my face as I do the kind of individual data entry with this, and I'm kind of punching in the numbers and I go, okay, well, let's check out, what this book sold for last month. And I look and lo and behold, nobody bought it. And that's really kind of the big surprising thing. I mean, again, this is just sort of one model. So it's kind of has its limitation. It kind of has its like bias in how it's calculated. Obviously, this is all graded comic book sales that we're talking about. So one of my interesting thoughts as it relates to the Silver Age books, because I have to normalize this for volume and prices, is that when we're talking about Silver Age books, we're really talking about more of the mid-ish grade, anywhere from 4.0s to 7.0s. We're never talking about the high grade stuff. Whereas for bronze books, we're definitely talking about 9.4s, 9.6s, and 9.8s. Of course, there are some exceptions. I'm not going to count a 9.8 giant size X-Men #1, but here we have a lot of high graded numbers for bronze and a lot of mid-grade numbers for silver. And with the non-sale factor for silver, you have to sort of wonder, maybe there is something to the fact that people are not interested in owning, sort of those mid-grade silver books. We recently had that CGC sale where they were trying to get people to submit vintage books within kind of that $400 price point. And you would think that the reason for that is because they're not getting a lot of volume there, because probably there's just not a lot of demand for people that are buying those types of books. With Silver Age, it's like people either want the ultimate blue chip grail graded, or they need their very, very high grade version of their key comic book graded. Maybe not a lot of people interested in the mid levels, whereas in the Bronze Age, people do like to have those high 9 numbers in the upper left corner of their books. Well, speaking of Bronze Age, 11% down this month, 17% up, actually pretty high, generally speaking, for a usual month, and 13% non-sale is pretty typical when we do these calculations. Now, for the month by month, this one is just the Silver Age books. Of course, we are the purple line, which represents 2024, and there you see it. For the very first time, a crossing pattern down over the yellow line. I have always raised the question, will we see numbers lower than that of 2020? That was really the target site that we had, because, again, it was late 2020/2021 when we had all the COVID money come into collectibles that really inflated the market. But, early on in 2020, you would think that that was kind of the native demand and the normal demand for what comic books were. So the question had always been, are we going to go below that of 2020? I kind of thought that we might flirt with it. Maybe we would kiss it, but we actually went below it here in the month of August. And so the question remains, will we continue to go down? I don't know. That 38% non-sale was a pretty big one. I have to imagine that there's going to be more comic book buyers, and a little bit of a preview as I did do the calculations for August. I was already seeing a lot of September sales as well. Now, here are the trend lines. Again, these are not drawn to scale, but you can generally get a feel that, it feels like maybe we are sort of on the bottom side of the trend line. This could be in one ways, represented by me saying that, oh, everything is really bad, we're going to zero. But on other ways, it could be very, very good for, comic book collectors, comic book buyers out there, depending on if you are a bear, depending on if you are a bull, which I guess means that it's time for me to give the bear and bull case for comic books. Well, here we are, another month, another update for the comic book index. This has been always a very interesting kind of experiment to follow this stuff and put this data together. Obviously, this is just, one point of entry. This is not a perfect system by any stretch of the imagination. But, if we think about it, it's really not more complicated than comic books are a product of people being interested in the space. And that's really it. If there's more people who want to buy comic books, then number go up. If there's less people that want to buy comic books, then number go down. And right now, with everything going on in the economy, things are tough out there. We got high interest rates. There's a lot of restrictive stuff going on. We got inflation, people having a hard time buying their groceries and things like that. So, the discretionary spending is just really not there. We've definitely had a lot of lackluster movies, people not as interested in the MCU, although that is starting to turn around. So, we kind of are where we are. Now, I did make that video just the other day talking about the high end of the market where there have been more $1 million sales in this calendar year than any other year prior to that. Now, that could also be directly correlated to the fact that, inflation is what it is. So of course the value of those comic books are going to go up. I mean, it's not so much that the comic books actually go up. It's just that the money is actually devalued. But, I digress on that point. So, generally speaking, I think that, if you look at the rest of the markets, it's S&P right now is all down, crypto is all down. This is kind of the sell in May and go away. September is always a down month. October is always a down month for, comic books and stuff like that. So we're kind of entering that point in the year, which means it could be a good chance or opportunity for people to, start to look at those things that you may want to buy. I mean, I know that that's been the gag, right? Like now is the time to buy. It's been now the time to buy for the last 2 years. But technically speaking, now is the time to buy. More so than 3 months ago and more so than 6 months prior to that. I mean, 3 months from now might be the now time to buy. And then a year from then might be the now time to buy. At the end of the day, we really don't know. We can only just serve up the information as we have it. And then you guys have to determine what makes sense for you. Now, before we wrap up the video, let's talk a little bit about the GoCollect Index. Let's sort here by the past month so that we can just kind of focus in on, and let me give you the quick overview. Big Spenders Club is a push. Golden Age, they say, is up right here. Silver Age is also a push. Bronze Age down, Copper Age down, and Modern Age. This one is really interesting. Modern Age actually up. I don't have a Modern Age index, but maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. But let's zoom in here to the Silver Age. Now, I'm not really sure why they called it a push. I mean, as we can see earlier in the month, it was at 1755, and now it is at 1753. So it definitely did go down, although, in the last week, maybe it's gone a little bit up. So interesting to see that. For the Bronze Age, they have theirs, generally speaking, going down. My month, of course, was on the way up. But again, I think the overall trend, if you back out and you look at it, even though we are an up month, generally speaking, well, what has the trend been? I mean, we've been going down. And so, you don't fight the trend. The trend is your friend until it's not. Here is the Copper Age going kind of up right there, looking kind of like a wonky graph, and basically settling right at the same line for where it started, right? So 891 at the beginning of the month, 890 at the end of the month. So basically a push. So that kind of lines up to what we have. So there you have it, folks. A little update for the comic book index for the month of August. Silver falling off of the cliff, with a little bit of a caveat. It's really that just nobody was willing to make those purchases. Nobody was that interested in actually pulling the trigger and hitting that buy it now on those books. And I know that that can just be a thing, if the book is not available, then no one can actually buy it. But again, you have to remember, these are very common books. They are always available out there on eBay and places where people buy their comic books. And so it's really interesting, maybe there's something to that fact that, when people buy those Bronze Age books, they like to have, 949698. Same thing with Copper Age, 949698. But Silver Age, if you have a Fantastic Four number 48, do you want it in a 3.0 grade or a 4.0 grade? Do you need your ASM 50 in a 5.0? Maybe not, and maybe that's kind of been the difference of where comic buyers are. Maybe the person who wants that ASM 50 in a 5.0 would rather just have it raw. But then if they buy an ASM 50 in a 9.0, they might for sure want that one to be graded, which goes back to how I do the calculations. I'm not calculating the 9.0 comic book because we're focusing on the most popular, in demand, most bought and sold ones, which I think in the case of ASM 50 is actually a 4.5. So there you go. Anyways, that's all right for this video. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about this update? What do you guys think about comic books right now? Are you buying? Are you selling? What are you guys collecting these days? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next video.